Hello everyone, welcome to part 24 of this series. Today we're going to set up camps and parts of the level. We'll also be using spawners to fill these camps with enemies. But before we start, I would like to thank all of my Patreon supporters for the amazing support. This scene will be made available on Patreon. So here we are back in our scene, and we're going to set up a small camp for our enemies, and we are going to be using a spawner to spawn the enemies in the camp so that they can respawn, spawn on based on distance, etc. Now the advantages of that is obviously performance, but also if they respawn, you won't find camps being empty after you kill the enemies the first couple of times. So there's a couple of advantages to that. Now I want to be clear, you don't have to use the spawner. You can do this with instantiate, but you won't have the advantages I mentioned previously. Now there's also the advantage of using Octave 3D for level design. It's just easier. Again, you can just manually place stuff, but it makes things a bit simpler. Now I'm going to create a really simple camp here. I want to be clear about that. It won't be anything spectacular, but it's just it's just something simple to set up. So we're going to start off by right clicking, and you think going here, but no, you have to create an empty. Let's call this Octave 3D. There we go. And here you add a component, so Octave 3D World Builder. And this will generate a grid and all of this stuff. Now first thing we need to do before I'm going to explain any of this is click on prefabs, and I'm going to dock this here simply because it's at a low resolution like 1080p you don't really have much space elsewhere. Now you don't have to do this, I want to be absolutely clear, you can place it wherever you want, but yeah, I find this to be the only place where I have some space. So I'm going to be using polygon knights here, and I'm going to use the buildings prefabs, so I'll drag those in. And I'm dragging in the entire folder, as you can see. So I have the entire folder. The advantage of that is that you can just switch easily between folders, but you don't have to do that. You can just drag in the prefabs manually as well. Next up, I'm going to drag in props as well. I think it was props, yeah. There we go. And from the polygon nature pack, I'm dragging in the props prefabs folder as well, because I want to use the fences. Now, as you can see right now, we have horizontal scrolling, we have vertical scrolling, and we don't have a lot of space. First things first, turn off show the hints, which will give you a lot more space. Then we go to look and feel, and if you are operating at 1080p like I am right now, you can do it like this, and basically you won't have to horizontally scroll anymore, and you can at least see 2 rows of prefabs at once, which is pretty nice. Now we have a lot of options here. I'm just going to go over a couple of the basic ones. I don't know everything yet. I haven't had this asset that long. It was on sale last week and I showed it in the on sale only video, and that's when I picked it up as well. So my experience with it is still limited, but I looked up some interesting things which I'll show you. So we have object placement, selection, erase, and snapping. And here we have decor paint, which is basically just placement on terrain, which we'll be using, and point and click, and others. Now point and click is what you use by default if, for example, you want to create a town, a village. I would recommend doing that in a separate scene, not in your main level, and just you only have that village, town, whatever in it, and you can start building it out, and once you're done you copy it over to your existing scene. It's just so much easier to do that. I would definitely recommend doing that. Now we're not creating an entire town here, we're just creating a small camp, so we don't have to go that far. And I'm going to be using decor paint and just place on the actual terrain. Now the grid is used for point and click, and in decor paint you don't need it. Unfortunately, it doesn't turn off by default. So what we have to do is we have to go here, object snapping, look and feel, XZ grid, and just turn it off, as there's honestly just no point in having it. So let's go back, and we have our decor paint. Now I'm going to use this area for one because it's really close to where we start, and two because there's no trees. I don't really have to alter the terrain. You know, there's space. Now the important thing when making a camp like this is having space, and the reason I'm saying that is even though it's a small camp, you don't want your characters to, you know, your enemies to get stuck because there's simply no space for them to navigate while nav mashing. So it's not as simple as it seems, you know, just place a couple of things and make it small and, you know, it'll work. It won't. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind. So I'm going to go to buildings here, and I'm just going to place a couple of tents. I'm not going to place actual buildings. So we have our tent here, and we can use Y to rotate the object, as you can see, and we can also hold Shift, hold Y, and then use the mouse to rotate it. And as you can see, that works really you know, well. You can choose the precise angle. So we have our first tent here. I'm going to select this one. I'll place it here, and in the middle, let me go back to this one. I think it was or in this props, I think we have a more convincing campfire. There we go. I'll place that in the middle. I'll put a cart next to it, something like this. And I'm, you know, placing these next to each other is no problem when it comes to nav mashing, as the entire area will just, you know, most likely not be used. But I just would recommend having, you know, keeping some space in general. It's I don't know, it's proven to be quite important. So yeah, you know, there's nothing all that exciting. I'm just going to keep this simple. Let me add another 2 little tents, and I'll place them literally next to each other. And these are not open tents, you know, these are literally just simple decor. You know, better Cinti assets in my opinion are in the big fantasy bundle, which I picked up as well, but you know, I just don't expect everyone to do that. And there we go. As yeah, those objects, you know, those objects are just better to use. So if you want to have something a bit more elaborate, you know, definitely recommend checking that out. Yeah, most likely if you had interest in that, you would have already picked it up. And yeah, this is annoying. Shift Y, and there we go. So cool. Now that's all I'm going to do for now. I'm just going to keep it simple. And next thing I'm going to do is something really cool. I mean, I think it's cool anyway. When we go to props, and I think it's this one, this has a couple of fences. We can put a chest here as well. That's nice. I don't know, you can go crazy with props obviously and just make it interesting. Do a lot more than I just did now, but yeah. I don't know. A couple of soldiers died here. Rest in peace. I mean, they shouldn't be that close placed that close to each other, but it's fine. Anyway, so next up what I'm going to do is I'm going to be placing a couple of fences, and I won't close off the camp entirely. You know, it can be annoying, but I want to show something really cool. So placing fences is a lot of manual work. I mean, that's it. It's just a lot of manual work, and a couple of really nice tools here is if you go use align to stroke, and then don't place it yet, you know, just rotate it correctly, and then use the J button to switch pivot points, and we want this one. Going to zoom out a bit here and hold the left button, and as you can see, we're literally creating a I don't know, a placement of fences in a really nice way. So this is honestly really cool. I really like this feature. It's manually placing stuff can be really annoying, so this is honestly just really cool. And yeah, I mean, you can go full circle. Now you can use this with what's it called, paths as well, which is another really cool thing. But yeah, it's really nice. I really like this feature. I think it's really useful. So yeah, there we have it. I'm going to select some paths. I think this one had a couple, or it didn't. I think I need a couple of other. I think it was environment. Path. Yeah, there we go. This is the one. So let me drag this in. And yeah, you have a lot of paths, but I'm going to be using this one. I think this one is fine, or just this one. And you can do it the same. I'm not really sure how it will work with the pivots, as this obviously is a bit less common. So I'm going to do a simple path here. Let me change the pivot point to the middle, and I'm going to try this out. And yeah, I mean, that works pretty well. It's a bit of a weird path, but you get the point. And honestly, this is just really cool. I really like this. It's definitely makes things a lot easier than normally. So this is something I'll be using a lot, and that's the nice thing with Octave 3D. It's a really good tool. So here we have our really incredibly simple camp. Now, one thing I'll need to do is organize this a bit. So I'm going to create a new folder here. Let's call it camp. And I'm going to drop them all in here. Drag it out of the... And there we go. I should have an environment folder. Environment. Going to place Octave 3D in there as well, and just place in the camp. There we go. Cool. So yeah, that's pretty nice, and yeah, as you can see, that's really useful. Now we need to do one thing. A lot of Cinti assets, especially older ones, don't have colliders, which is incredibly strange, but yeah, they don't have colliders. As you can see, these fences are part of them. So we need to add some mesh colliders. You can select them all at once and just click convex. I'm going to keep them incredibly simple. So yeah. Now the camp is pretty open, and still, it will be a bit difficult with navigating with nav meshing. So something to definitely keep in mind. You might have to definitely rearrange a couple of things in order to make sure characters don't get stuck. And I just want to be honest about that. It's I just created something, I haven't tested it, and it might be that characters are getting stuck. So something to definitely keep in mind. So okay, cool. We did that part. These are these are all with colliders. So it's just some packs, some don't. It's bit strange. Cool. So yeah, done that. We're good there. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to create some prefabs. So I'm going to create a new folder here in assets. Folder, where's folder? There we go. Prefabs, and we're going to drag in some characters here. Now we have these characters, the wolf and our enemy, and I'm literally just going to drag them in there. Oh, you can't do multiple at once, sorry about that. So we have our enemy, we have a nice little preview, and we have our wolf as well. Now, one thing you'll notice is the way we set it up before, you know, all of this seems to work just fine. You know, we have our behavior, all good, all nice, but this doesn't, what is it? The last thing we set up doesn't work, and that's grabbing the list variable. And the reason for that is because the prefabs will be grabbing, you know, can't grab it from the scene, they need to grab it locally. So basically what we, globally, what we need to do is we need to make those prefabs as well. So we have our list variables. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove our enemy, and I'm going to remove our wolf, and I'm going to be opening up this prefab. And here, where is it? There we go. Assets, not self, assets, enemy of enemy list. So yeah, needs to be prefab as well. And I need to do the same with the wolf. What was it? Humans list, I think. And for some reason I have that twice, not really sure why. Cool. So yeah, you know, little change, but yeah, something to keep in mind. Now, we don't have to keep them in the scene anymore either. I'm just going to keep them for now, you know, it's fine. But yeah, something to keep in mind. Now, next up, let's drag him back into the scene again. Not because we're going to use him. I'm going to unpack, rename it. I don't know why I have two numbers, but I'm just going to keep that for consistency. And we're just going to drag in a new character model. So I want to have a bit of variation. They'll all act exactly the same, but you know, at least they'll have a bit more variety. So fantasy hero characters, character presets. Let me lock this. We were using 4. I know 5 is the pretty much female version of it, as you can see here. You know, looks good, and we'll use that. And yeah, that's it. Cool. Duplicate this one. Let's call it basic enemy 3. Oh, I was locking the wrong one. 3, there we go. Another 3, and I'll drag in 6, which is looks like this. Nice variation again. Cool. So now we have yeah, I need to change this back to 2. Now we have a couple of different ones. I know you should have a lot more. I'm just going to keep this really simple. So let's go back to our prefabs folder, and we're going to be dragging these in as well. So 2 and 3. And let's remove these. Cool. So yeah, that's I mean, that's it for this part. So we created a couple of prefabs, all nice and, you know, all great. Now, the enemy of enemy list prefab doesn't by default have anything here, which is a bit annoying because we set those up in the scene, but they're not in here. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this, so we'll remove them for now, and same with the humans, we'll remove them from now. So player, I'm going to do a really simple one. I want to keep it clean. Oh no, the player doesn't have that many triggers, that's fine. So trigger, on start, now let's keep that all nice and tidy. Add to list. Basically what we're doing on start is we're adding our, you can do on enable as well, by the way, and then you can use that with the spawning of the characters, which is a nice thing to do. But yeah, on enable, we're adding our player to add to list variables, player, I don't know, index 0. Oh, this should be player. There we go. Game object, and we'll look up the new list variable, which is enemy of enemy list, I think. Yeah, there we go. Now you can do the same, so we'll also add them to the humans lists, and yeah, this one. And you know, that way they'll he'll get added to the list and it will all work great. So next up is actually setting up that that spawner. So let's create a empty. No, let's just directly create the spawner. And what are the locations? Oh, that was my mistake. I don't know, 8.5 was it, I think. Where is our spawner? And let's make it a bit bigger, I don't know, 10. And there we go, so we can easily spot it. And yeah, there we have it. Cool. Yeah, something like this, I don't know. Here's fine. So in order for this to work, I'm going to make this big, so let's say 60. And you have a couple of options here, and that's why I like the spawner. So basically, once you kill them, you can have them respawn, and you can have it despawn by distance in order to increase performance. You could do that with the entire camp as well, by the way. Just create the entire camp as a prefab. It's a bit less reliable, obviously, as the terrain is not flat. So placement is not guaranteed to go well. So, you know, something to keep in mind. Easiest way to do this is make sure the terrain is flat just here. So just edit the terrain and use spawner with add spawner origin. And I'm going to use that for the characters as well. Going to do all three. I'm curious to know if they're actually really going to stack up on each other. Will be interesting. So I'm just going to do one of each for now. I'm just going to keep this simple. Now, if you want some variation in your camps and you'll be using this a lot, you could do spawn by weight. Obviously, you'd have to have more prefabs to have that variation. But you know, if you are using the same assets I am, you know, hero characters has so many different preset characters. You can just create 10 variations and have them spawn by weight, and then you know you have basically you know, drop chances. That's kind of the idea. So you'd have a lot of variety in your world and not it always being the same characters even on respawn, which is really cool. I'm not going to use that because I'm not going to use spawn by weight because I only have 3 characters. There's a lot of other settings, you know, the duration. If you know, right now 10 seconds obviously is really fast, but we do need to test this out. But you could set this to a couple of minutes, an hour even, if you wanted to take that long before they respawn after you clear a camp. Same with distance, you know, now it's auto calculated. You can manually set that as well if you want it to be bigger than the actual collider. So if you want them to spawn when you get in, but only despawn when you're here, for example. So a lot of things to set. Definitely try it out, see what works for you. So we're going to keep it just like this. Now one thing is when we go to AI here and navigation, we have a small issue. So everything's, you know, set up correctly, but our camp is not nav meshed. So right now they could just walk anywhere, which is yeah, not great. So what we need to do is, I mean, you can do this several ways. I'm often not really sure if we even have to do this, but I'm going to select all of these, not the stones, obviously. I don't want them to, they shouldn't interfere. And we'll make them not walkable. So we're going to do all of those, and we'll bake those as not walkable. So the objects are now baked in the nav mesh, and as you can see, there's space, still a couple of tricky parts here which could cause some issues, same as here. So yeah, that's why it's important to nav mesh well, and yeah, we might run into a couple of small issues, but it's fine. Just going to keep it as is for now. So anyway, we have our spawner. I'm trying at spawner origin for once. I'm not really sure that will work well, but we'll try it out. So the area should be big enough. It's a decent collider. So once we get here, we'll go towards the camp and we'll try it out. And I forgot I still had the intro on as well. Oh well, that's okay. For once, I'll turn it off after this. Yeah. Intro, yay. Cool. So let's run towards those items here. Let's pick it up. See, the book isn't properly aligned. That's okay. Anyway, let's run towards the camp, and we should be in their spawn radius now. And again, you might want to increase the spawn radius just a bit. And yeah, they're not here, which is interesting. I'm going to check, but I don't actually see them being spawned in the scene either. So I'll need to try this again. So this is the spawn. Okay, so maybe default is better. And we'll try that again. So now that we no longer have the opening cinematic, we can just go straight for the camp. I'm not going to pick up the sword, I just want to make sure, as we can see, they're spawned in. And we have our, enemy there. He spots us, all good. As we can see, some of these are a bit stuck, and that's definitely, you'll need to experiment a bit with placement, with nav meshing. There's things you'll need to do to get it right. I'm just going to be honest, it's not as easy as I made it out to be. You'll need to carefully look into that. So yeah, placement, and those stands have to be a bit lower. But placement and making sure they can actually nav mesh. As you can see, he's easily getting stuck here, which is quite annoying, and might have to do with the patrol, but he should normally just walk around it. They're all using navigation mesh. Now some of these are functioning just fine, so it's the little things you will need to iron out, tweak a bit. It's it might take up a bit of work. But yeah, it's as you can see, it's really cool. It's really easy to use the tools. It's obviously will take a bit more work to really refine them. So yeah, it might take some work, but it's cool to use nonetheless, and I definitely recommend refining it a bit. So there it is. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.